to Solving for the Undefined podcast. I'm your host, Johanna, founder of Miss Kuiper's Classroom, the place that equips teachers in creating a healthy math classroom where students can thrive, no matter their academic abilities. But it's not always about the numbers, and that's why I'm here, bringing you the formulas to solve your problems, math and otherwise, plus strategies on cultivating that necessary math mindset. And that's what you can count on. All right. Hello. Welcome to a brand new episode. Today we are joined by Cassandra, and we're going to be sharing all about assessments. Welcome.
Hey, Johanna.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Will you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. My name's Cassandra Harris. I currently teach middle and high school. I'm at one of those really small schools. It's a K-12 school, so I teach 8th grade math and 9th grade geometry. And so my education story is a little odd because I had never planned to be a teacher.
Me neither.
In high school, I said I will never be a teacher.
Wow, how the tables have turned.
Yes, they sure have. It just kind of worked out that I actually started in engineering and realized that that was not for me. And so I switched my degree to math. And I started in the finance industry. That didn't work out. And I was a few months from getting married, and I was offered a position to teach at a private school. And so I taught there and then went to another private school for a couple of years, got my master's, and then I'm currently still at the same school that I actually graduated from.
Wow.
7 years.
That's so cool. Are any of the teachers that you had still working there?
Yes, they are. There's a couple of them have retired since I've started, but there's another math teacher that I actually had in high school that still teaches there.
That's so crazy.
He's the one that really recommended me for the job.
Nice. That's awesome. Oh, I love that. So, thinking about today's topic of our episode, you started in the non-education field, moved into the education realm. And so through that, what sparked your passion for assessments?
My passion for assessments is kind of an odd take on how it started. I started with my grade book. As weird as that sounds, I keep Google Sheets backup copy of my grade book, and I started tracking absences, and then kids who were making failing grades, and then kids that were making zeros. And then I started also attending trainings on state assessments, and I was looking at how those were graded and types of questions that were actually asked on the exam. And I wanted to make sure that my assessments would prepare my students for those exams, given a variety of types of questions, your short answer, your fill in the blank, your multi-select, kind of your drag and drop. And so that really piqued my interest, is really preparing kids to feel comfortable when the state test came. And so I also, when I was looking at the scores, I like to look at their individual rankings that they get from the state assessment. So the first year we did a state test, and so we got a 1-page document for each student. And it was they gave you their score, and then they gave you different categories like number and operations, proportional reasoning, geometry, and then statistics and probability. And they told you if they were on grade level, on track, and behind. And so I took that information and I actually put each one of my students' information in a spreadsheet so that I could see it all in one place. And it just makes a huge difference for me in the planning world, and that really pushes me to help meet my students' needs.
I love that. I'm a huge data nerd, and so I love all the pie graphs and different showings of student data. And so it'd be so cool to get all that information and make it more of a visual way, because like you said, if you have one page per student, it's kind of hard to see an overview, especially with all the information you're getting for it. So I love that you put it into like a spreadsheet so you can see like overall data for planning purposes. So moving into kind of how teachers can work with assessments in the classroom, can you tell us a little bit about the different types of assessments?
Yes, these are just some that I use for my classroom. I use exit tickets, and for me, I use paper exit tickets, and I usually only put about 3 questions on there just so they're quick and easy to grade and collect data on. I also do formative assessments. Being a math teacher, whiteboards are like the easiest thing to do a really quick check on understanding. And it's really easy to collect data because you can quickly see who has it and who doesn't have it. I also do quizzes, which are I call those mini summative assessments because they don't test on quite as much information. And they usually don't focus on as many topics on those as well. And then, of course, your summative assessment, which is your unit assessment, where you have multiple topics kind of in one exam.
Nice. And question about the summative assessment, because I've heard different schools of thought on them. On a summative assessment, are you just having material from the most recent unit, or are you also pulling questions from topics that you covered in previous units?
I have thought about pulling topics from previous units, and I think moving forward, that's something I would like to do, like spiral review tests. But currently, I only use what we are currently on in our units. I,
Gotcha.
I think that's a great idea to pull, just a couple of questions, and you can even label it, recall questions.
I've never thought about labeling it recall questions. That's kind of cool. I like that idea. Kind of showing like the breakup of two different subjects. So that way kids know new something we've already learned in the past. Nice. So thinking about all of those different type assessments, the exit tickets, the formative, the quizzes, and then the summative, how are these beneficial to understanding where students are in their learning?
They just give you an overall view of what your students can do in different types of situations, and when they're asked a different amount of topics. Because, I think you'll agree that just on any given test day, a kid's going to perform differently. Like a summative, I have kids that get really bad test anxiety for like a summative test, and so they don't do as well. But if you give them like an exit ticket where they just feel like, oh, okay, she's just wanting to see what I know, and turning that in, you kind of have more of an understanding of what they can do as well. Just having that variety really gives you a better view of what your students know and understand, and it allows you to modify how you approach teaching the next topic or what you're going to teach the next day.
So they're kind of like mini snapshots of students in that time frame. And I like what you said about having the variety of assessments, because students who have that test anxiety maybe don't feel as anxious during a exit ticket or even a formative, because like you said, and I loved it, whiteboards, doing something on a whiteboard always seems to kind of give students that relief that they need in order to feel comfortable to try something that they might not normally try. And so I love that you have that variety. So, when would you give these different types of assessments, or how often would you give them?
Okay, so for like a exit ticket, I usually do those maybe once or twice a week. It just kind of depends on how many topics that we've covered during that week. Formative or whiteboards is pretty much just about every single day. I feel like that just gives a quick snapshot. You don't have to record the data every time, but it just gives you a quick snapshot of, hey, I need this. There's a lot of students that do not understand this part of the topic, and so I need to go back and readdress this. And then quizzes I usually give once a week, and then summative, of course, is at the end of a unit, and it really depends on the length of the unit, 3 to 4 weeks. So Some of our units have 10 lessons in them, so they take a while to cover.
Yeah, that would be a lot. And do you find giving like an exit ticket? I already forgot what you said. How often do you give exit tickets?
Usually once a week.
Okay. So giving like or taking formative every day or the exit ticket or the quizzes once a week, do you feel like all of that data kind of gives a good picture of how students will do on a summative assessment?
I do. I feel like it has at least usually within, I would say around 10 points or so on their average. That's usually a pretty good snapshot. And if you want me to, I'll also go over how I score those because it might be a little different from what most teachers do.
I'd love to hear that.
Okay, so I record these a little different. I don't do a numerical grade. I know that's the traditional way of grading. I do what's called a proficiency scale, and that is based off of student understanding of a topic or standard. And so I usually rate this as a 0, a 1, a 2, or a 3. And so a score of 0 means even with help, there's no demonstration of understanding of a topic. A score of 1, this is basic recall and can show some understanding with help. A score of 2 can complete part of a topic, show some understanding without much help. And then a score of 3 would be mastery of the topic or standard with little to no errors or guidance.
That's awesome. Our school also uses a proficiency scale, but we do 1 through 4. But and this is something that we've all created on our own. We've had to go through our standards and kind of map out on our own with our data teams of what's a 1 look like versus a 4. And we always get stuck on like the partial differentiation between like a 2 and a 3, or I guess in your case like a 1 and a 2. And I like that you add for like I think you said a 1 has basic recall with help. And I love that piece because some kids can get it with just a little bit of help, but it still shows like the lack of independent thought sometimes. But I love that piece. I've never thought about adding it.
Yes, and I actually have a great resource that you would love to use where you could find help for this as well.
I'd love to hear about it.
Okay, so it's called AMSTI. It's Alabama Mathematics Teachers and Science Initiative. I think that's the acronym for it. Anyways, they have a whole thing on proficiency skills for every grade level in math. And I know my state standards may be a little different from yours, but they actually have a breakdown of what we call critical standards. So these are the main things that build from year to year. And they also have proficiency scales and what a level 1 is, a level 1.5, a 2, 2.53. And they do go to 4. I typically just do 1 to 3 just because it's easier for me to grade. 4, I would be if I put a kid in a 4, that's the kids that I need to kind of push to the next kind of grade level of that standard, what it builds to. If I thought, well, this kid's got it, I've got to go ahead and push them to the next standard.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to have to check it out because that sounds like exactly what we need to like guide us further in working on our proficiency scales. Thank you.
No problem.
We're here to give you an extra boost for this back to school season with a bonus sale on Teachers Pay Teachers. Coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday, August 29th and 30th, you can save up to 25% on resources site-wide. This is the perfect time to try the Name Tent and A to Z Get to Know Me activity from episode 67, or my mild, medium, and spicy practice and active notes from episodes 68 and 70. Whichever resources you choose, make sure to use code BTSBonus23 at checkout to get the complete 25% off your purchase. Now let's get back to the podcast. Now that we have an understanding of how you grade, how do you record those student scores?
Okay, so I have, of course, a spreadsheet. It's like an assessment tracker, and so I usually do 3 types of assessments for each standard. I feel like that gives me a good amount of data, and one of those is a exit ticket. I have an option for an exit ticket, and then a formative assessment, however I give that, and then the other option could either be a quiz usually a quiz, because I usually want to get 3 pieces of information before the summative assessment, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I want to add a 4th category, I could go in and add the summative assessment.
Nice. And then when you put all of those scores into the spreadsheet, is their score an average of all of their numbers?
Yeah, so what I do is I have a little box for each one, and I do percentages. And so I put a percentage for level 1, percentage for level 2, and a percentage for level 3. I look at that, and that kind of helps drive my instruction.
Okay, cool.
We group students as well. Like if I want to group light thinkers together, I can. Like kids that are struggling with the same topic, if I want to pull and do small group, I could do that. Or if I want to put them with a kid that's got it, that I know will do a good job helping explain something to them, I can group them that way as also.
Nice. That's awesome. Whenever I have like conversations with people in like the math education space, my brain always is like having 2 trains of thought of like one trying to keep the podcast interview going, but also like how can I take this and apply it to my classroom? And so I'm always having like 2 lines of thought happening in my head during these types of conversations. So, what is the benefit of using the proficiency scale and overall doing things this way?
Using this score, I can quickly recognize what level of understanding that my students have. And then this also allows me to modify the direction of my unit to meet my students' needs. It also helps me prepare for each unit when I have my state testing data organized. And then I know what aspects of each unit I need to spend more time on and embed strategies in my lessons to help students deepen their understanding of the math.
That's awesome. I love the deepening your understanding of math because I think sometimes some curriculums or some teachers will kind of go over things at a very foundational or surface level. And those are the times where students are using that like short term memory, that recall, and that mimicking rather than understanding it at a deeper level to be able to use it more flexibly and see like the interconnections between the math concepts too. So I love that you have that deepening understanding piece in there.
That kind of brings me to last week. I had to do a mini lesson on Pythagorean theorem because I'm not going to have time to really cover it before we take our state test. And so they got the answer, and it was like the square root of 104. So then we had a discussion about, well, was the square root of 104 rational or irrational? So we had a discussion about, what type of level question this was. And then I said, okay, what if we didn't have a calculator? How would we estimate this to the nearest 10th? And then we had a great discussion about perfect squares. And, they were able to estimate it pretty close. And then I said, that's what they consider a level 3 question in the numbered operations without a calculator section. And they were just amazed. They're like, this is a level 3 question? I'm like, yes, it is.
Nice. I bet that was such like a confidence booster for them.
Oh, it was. They loved it. They just I thought, well, I'm going to take this moment and extend upon, talking about square roots or irrational numbers.
Ah, that would have been awesome to see. So, kind of moving into the teacher's perspective on hearing this, and maybe their doubt is this is too time consuming to do all of these different assessments, score them based on their proficiency, and record the data. What would you say to that?
If you're more comfortable with giving a grade out of 100%, do whatever, works for your classroom. Also, it depends on how you set up your data tracking. I feel like you should just start with one class because, most high school teachers at least have over 100 kids a day, and that's a lot. So I would say pick one class and go from there, collect. And it's overwhelming to try to collect, all that data over all of your students. And also, I would something I think that saves a lot of time is recording things digitally if you can. Like if you want to do really quick digital assessments, there's some tools that you could use such as quizzes. You could give like an exit ticket there or in Google Forms and look it. I use the free version, but I think if you do the paid version, there's a lot more options for you to kind of analyze what they've answered correctly and incorrectly.
Nice. And I will link all of those down in the description and show notes because I love quizzes. It is so much fun. I always get the music stuck in my head whenever we play it. So you can definitely find those in the description.
And my kids also love quizzes also.
I had my first experience with Book It this weekend or this past week. This is terrible of us, but as a staff, we had conferences, and the way we do conferences in the evening is we all sit in the gym in like a giant circle, and like parents and grown-ups can come to us. And the very first night, we had probably 5 sets of grown-ups come the entire 4 hours we were there. And so in our staff group chat, we kept putting like codes for Book It games, and we were just playing Book It's in between conferences, and it was unprofessional, but it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like it was a lot of fun.
And you could hear people around the room as soon as people were like sniping money from them, like, oh, come on. And it's just like totally silent everywhere else. And it's just like random pop ups of people like being like, yes, or no, how dare you? It was a lot of fun.
Sounds like y'all had a good time.
Yes, we did. So, how can teachers, kind of getting us back on track here, how can teachers get started using these assessments and tracking data for their students?
Yeah, first I would start with one unit for you to try this, and then I would pick 3 assessments or 3 different types of assessments to track. You could choose a formative assessment such as a whiteboard activity, exit ticket, a quiz, and then a unit test. And this will allow you to see where your students are in their understanding. You can also record these in any way, such as percentages if you prefer, or as a proficiency scale option. And if you're more of a paper person, you can write this down and keep track of it in a binder. I prefer digital because it's easier for me to see the data, and then I can quickly sort it and organize it as I need it. And then once you have your data, use this to help guide your instruction. The reason that I collect this data is so that I can better understand the needs of my students, and I allow it to guide my instruction.
So, really, a huge benefit of tracking the data from all of these different assessments not only gives you a snapshot of where students are at, but then you can utilize that data and inform your instruction to best meet the needs of your students.
That's exactly.
That's awesome. So, what resources do you have available for us that we can use to start our journey in this way?
I actually have a free guide. It's simply organized with Cassandra.com/free guide. And that's just giving you some kind of intro to using Google Sheets to organize stuff. I give you some quick tips on how to like sort things, how to use the filter tool. There's videos for each tip, as well as kind of a step-by-step if you're more of you like to read the directions or instructions, and you can read those in about 15 minutes. And then if you would like more information on like proficiency scales because you're more interested in grading that way, online, AMSTA actually has a website. It's called, I have it here now, Alabama Math, Science, and Technology Initiative. And they also have so many other resources besides just proficiency scales. And also, teachers know their students to collect the information that you feel like would accurately represent their ability. And I have found that it also builds classroom community, and your students usually will happily share information with you about what they don't know or understand. And you can also use Google to, if you're not, familiar with different types of assessments, Google different types of assessments that you can use in your classroom, and then how to use these assessments.
Awesome. We have a wealth of resources available to us. So thank you for sharing all of those.
No problem. I'm glad I could share.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise. I know I learned a lot, and I'm excited to kind of implement some of these in my classroom for my students. So, one question that I always ask as we kind of wrap up the episode is, what is your favorite math-related joke or pun?
Okay, I actually have a shirt with this pun on it. It's parallel lines have so much in common, it's a shame they'll never meet.
Oh my gosh, yes, that would be an awesome shirt.
Oh, I've worn it before when I taught systems of equations, and my kids got a kick out of it.
That is the perfect shirt for that. That is awesome. Oh, that's cool. And where can people find you to learn more?
I'm on Instagram at Simply Organized with Cassandra. I also have if you're really interested in learning more about organizing your data for your classroom, I have a wait list. My courses on simplyorganizedwithcassandra.com/data made simple wait list. And so my course is really focused on data. I'm also going to give you some tips on different types of assessments that you can use to also put into your spreadsheets for your data.
Nice. And I will leave a link to that waitlist in the description and show notes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much again for taking the time to share your expertise, and I'm excited to have this episode released.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. To find all the links and resources to things talked about in this episode, head on over to MissKuipersClassroom.com and click on podcast.